Why is it illegal in this state to whistle near a church on a Sunday, yet perfectly legal for a man with a foxtail on a stick to smack you awake during a 3-hour sermon? Welcome to 71 Dumbest Hobbies in Massachusetts History that were actually legal, where we are exposing the wildest historical facts, like the time celebrating Christmas could get you arrested, alongside absurd laws about clamping a cursor's tongue in a split stick and the myths you still believe, like thinking the pilgrims landed wearing big buckled hats. We are proving which insane stories are 100% real history and which are just colonial cover-ups, so hit that subscribe button before we reveal the truth. 1. The year is 1642, and Massachusetts just passed a law saying if the town's selectmen decided you were too dumb to teach your own kid to read, they could legally take that kid away. Not babysit. Imagine a stranger knocking on your door, eyeballing your child and going, "Nope, you flunked the vibe check." Parents everywhere suddenly cramming the alphabet at midnight, terrified of pop quizzes from a guy named Goodman Selectman. Worst part of all, this was considered the reasonable, forward-thinking option. 2. Now here is one that escalated fast. In the 1700s, Massachusetts had a law saying if a banished Jesuit Catholic priest came back, any random citizen could legally execute him on sight. No trial, no paperwork. Just spot a priest, recall the rule, handle it. So colonial Bostonians were basically walking around as part-time bounty hunters for theology. Some farmer minding his cabbage suddenly responsible for enforcing international religious policy. The priests understandably decided Massachusetts was simply not on their travel bucket list that decade. 3. Picture a colonial constable walking your street, sniffing the air, and arresting you because your kitchen smells like cinnamon. For over 20 years, celebrating Christmas in Massachusetts was flat out illegal. Bake a mincemeat pie, hum a carol on December 25th, and you earn yourself a criminal fine. The Puritans genuinely believed fun was a gateway to sin. Families ate dinner in nervous silence on Christmas, praying nobody outside heard a single accidental jingle. 4. Imagine paying a man to hit you with a foxtail. In colonial Salem, the church employed an official called the tithingman, and his legal job was carrying a long staff with a heavy foxtail tied to the end. Doze off during the 3-hour sermon, and he tickled you awake. Catch him in a bad mood, and he flipped it around to whack you. Entire congregations sat bolt upright, terrified of getting bonked by a haunted feather duster. 5. Your outfit needed a receipt in 1651 Massachusetts. The sumptuary laws made it illegal to wear gold lace, silver buttons, or a silk cape unless you could prove a personal net worth of 200 English pounds. Constables could stop you mid-stroll and demand financial paperwork because your buttons looked a little too shiny. Broke colonists everywhere quietly downgrading their wardrobes, terrified that one fanny sleeve could drag them straight into court. 6. Pure paranoia built this next law. In early Boston, smoking tobacco outdoors was completely illegal because officials genuinely believed one careless pipe would torch the entire city. Grown men had to sneak indoors to puff in peace, hiding like rebellious teenagers dodging their parents. Picture a constable sprinting down the street, screaming at a man over a single wisp of smoke. The whole town treated one casual cigarette like a walking, breathing arson threat. 7. The deer of Massachusetts had a day off, and it was Sunday. For centuries, the state legally banned all hunting on Sundays, and it had nothing to do with the animals. This was a blue law designed to herd every citizen into church instead of the woods. Skip the sermon to bag a buck, and you were officially a criminal. The deer, meanwhile, learned the schedule and spent every Sunday strutting around completely untouchable. 8. Saying cheers became a crime in 1639. Massachusetts passed the continent's first ban on health drinking, meaning raising a toast to someone was now an arrestable offense. Walk into a tavern, lift your mug, wish a friend good health, and a constable could legally haul you off. Colonial drinkers sat clutching their beers in awkward silence, too scared to acknowledge each other. The most wholesome gesture imaginable suddenly reclassifies as borderline gang activity. 9. Hanging out with friends was literally illegal in colonial Boston. More than 3 people could not stand together on a street corner unless they were clearly headed to church, school, or a funeral. Just chatting? Suspicious. Lingering? Criminal. You would see groups of 4 nervously explaining to a constable that they were absolutely, definitely on their way to a funeral. Boston basically outlawed the ancient art of casually catching up with the boys. 10. Talk too much in colonial Massachusetts and they threw you in a river. If the town decided you were a common scold, meaning a chronic gossip or relentless complainer, they tied you to a wooden chair and repeatedly dunked you underwater. The whole town gathered at the riverbank, cheering while some poor soul got plunged for the crime of having opinions. Complaining about the freezing water, ironically, just earned you another dunk. 11. Towns went door to door asking, "Hey, can you read?" In colonial Massachusetts, any town with more than 50 families had to legally hire a professional schoolmaster or face brutal financial penalties from the crown. No teacher meant pay up. Villages scrambled to recruit literally anyone who knew their letters. Imagine an entire town's budget resting on whether they could find one guy who understood the alphabet better than the local cabbage farmer. 12. This one turned dark fast. In 1723, Boston legally ordered every single dog inside city limits to be chained up or put to death, all to stop the spread of rabies. Dog owners woke up to a citywide ultimatum: leash your best friend or lose him. Families panicked, chaining beloved pets while constables roamed enforcing the grimmest math imaginable. The dogs, completely innocent, just wanted belly rubs and instead got swept into colonial public health policy. 13. A crumpled deck of cards could brand you an agent of Satan. In colonial Massachusetts, owning playing cards was serious trouble because cards were officially condemned as tools of devilish gambling. A harmless game of solitaire was basically consorting with the devil. Picture a constable raiding your home and triumphantly holding up your deck like he busted a crime ring. Colonists hid their cards in floorboards, terrified of a snitching King of Hearts 14. Forget the beef and face the courts. Early Massachusetts maritime law made it a severe offense for a ship captain to set sail without a legally mandated minimum stock of salted beef. Captains everywhere triple counted their barrels before departure, sweating over whether they packed enough cured meat to satisfy the government. Imagine an entire voyage delayed because an inspector decided the beef situation was looking dangerously, criminally light. Cured meat ran the colony. 15. For most of the 1700s, theater itself was a crime in Massachusetts. Performing a stage play or a public musical drama was completely illegal across the whole state because acting was apparently a gateway to chaos. A troupe of dramatic colonists would whisper Shakespeare in a barn like underground criminals, one lookout posted at the door. The most threatening thing in the room was a man reciting a monologue, and somehow that was enough. 16. Single guys in colonial Massachusetts got assigned roommates by the government. Unmarried men were legally barred from living alone because a bachelor with his own space was apparently a moral hazard. The town forced them to board with an approved local family like a mandatory adult homestay program. Imagine being 28, fully capable, and the town announcing, nope, you live with the Hendersons now, and yes, they absolutely have a curfew. 17. Massachusetts invented cheap beer rights before almost anything else. The colony set the first legal maximum price for a gallon of beer, capping what tavern owners could charge working citizens. Overcharge for your ale and you met the magistrate. Picture a tavern keeper, sweating as a customer, pulls out a tiny ruler to check if the price was legal. The government basically declared affordable beer a public right, the most likable law here. 18. One frustrated dang it could mount you in the town square like an exhibit. If you got caught casually cursing colonial Massachusetts, the law made you stand in public with your tongue wedged inside a split stick. An actual clamp on your tongue for everyone to see. Stub your toe, mutter the wrong word, and crowds would stroll by to inspect the guy whose own mouth got him legally pinched. 19. Joining the militia was not a hobby, it was the law. Every adult male in colonial Massachusetts had to serve, and skipping out meant immediate property seizure. Miss drill day and you lost your land. Picture some guy who just wanted a quiet morning farming suddenly watching officials eyeball his house because he ducked musket practice. Town basically said freedom is mandatory, attendance is required, and your barn is the collateral. 20. A cow simply could not keep a secret. Boston made it illegal to keep a live cow on your property if you lived on certain designated downtown residential streets. Wrong address meant no cow. Picture a man defiantly hiding a full-grown cow behind his townhouse, frantically shushing it every time a constable walked past. The cow, enormous and impossible to conceal, would moo loudly at the worst moment and instantly snitch on its owner. 21. One luxurious ponytail could get you labeled a vain little troublemaker. Early Massachusetts governors had strong opinions about hair, and wearing long locks or fancy powdered wigs was legally denounced as a sinful display of vanity. Apparently, having too much going on up top meant your soul was in danger. Picture a stern governor squinting at a man's flowing curls like they personally offended God. Colonists nervously tucked their hair away, just in case. 22. Light bread could land you in actual jail. In colonial Massachusetts, if your loaf weighed even a fraction of an ounce under the colony's official standard, you were locked up. Bakers obsessively weighed dough at dawn, sweating over a scale like a single missing crumb could ruin their lives. Imagine an inspector marching in, plopping your loaf down, and the entire bakery holding its breath waiting on a verdict like a courtroom drama. 23. Boston had to legally ban football because grown men kept flattening pedestrians. This early chaotic version of soccer was outlawed from public streets after one too many bystanders got bowled over. Picture a poor colonist carrying eggs home, suddenly trampled by a stampede of sweaty athletes chasing a ball. The city declared the sport a genuine public hazard. The players naturally just relocated one street over and kept the carnage rolling. 24. Falling in love in colonial Massachusetts required paperwork. Couples who began a courtship without the woman's father's explicit written consent got severely fined. Young men nervously approached dad with a quill, basically applying for an official relationship permit. Imagine getting fined by the government because you held hands before the proper forms were filed and stamped. Romance in this colony came with a legal department, a processing queue, and a non-negotiable approval fee. 25. The town of Marlborough banned fun and made it stick. Selling or setting off commercial firecrackers anywhere inside the municipal borders was completely illegal. Marlborough simply decided that loud, bright, and explosive did not belong in its tidy little limits. Picture a guy sneaking one firecracker, lighting it, and a constable materializing instantly from the bushes. Residents got to enjoy their holidays in the thrilling, legally approved silence of absolutely nothing happening. 26. One bad decision came with a lifelong facial update. Criminals convicted of burglary or grand theft in colonial Massachusetts were legally branded on the forehead with a hot iron shaped like the letter B forever. Imagine trying to start fresh in a brand new town while a giant glowing B announces your entire criminal history. The colony basically invented a no-takebacks reputation system, etched permanently, painfully, directly onto your face. 27. The government could legally force you to fix the roads for free. Every citizen in colonial Massachusetts had to work a set number of days each year repairing public dirt paths, completely unpaid. Picture a man dragged from his farm to shovel mud all day while officials supervised with clipboards. The colony basically turned road maintenance into a mandatory group project where nobody volunteered and absolutely nobody received a single thank you. 28. A wandering horse could munch its way into a court case. In colonial Massachusetts, letting your horses roam loose on public land during peak crop season was strictly illegal because one animal could trample an entire town's harvest. Farmers frantically fenced in their animals, terrified of a single escapee. Picture a horse casually strolling into a cornfield while its owner sprints behind it, screaming about legal consequences nobody ever asked for. 29. Looking too good from the knees down was a crime against the social order. Colonial Massachusetts even policed footwear, banning fancy, highly decorated leather boots for anyone not part of the upper aristocratic class. Your boots had to match your bank account. Picture a regular working man strolling proudly in stylish boots, only for a constable to inspect his ankles like a one-man, deeply serious traveling fashion court. 30. Grocery shopping became a sin on Sunday mornings. In colonial Massachusetts, selling fresh meat or produce before noon on a Sunday was treated as a major violation of the strict blue laws. No bacon, no carrots, no exceptions. Picture a hungry colonist desperately knocking on a butcher's door, while the butcher silently mouths, "Not today, it's illegal." Everyone stood around staring longingly at food they were legally forbidden to buy. 31. Sounding too happy near a church was treated as rebellion. In colonial Massachusetts, whistling out loud while walking past a church on a Sunday morning was classified as a punishable public disturbance. One cheerful tune earned you a criminal record. Picture a guy strolling along, lips puckered, blissfully unaware, while a nearby constable's eye twitches with pure rage. The colony decided silence was the only legal soundtrack and your good mood was the problem. 32. Affection had office hours and Sunday was firmly closed. Under strict Puritan codes, a husband could be legally prosecuted for publicly kissing his wife on a Sunday afternoon. Married in love, totally innocent peck, suddenly a crime. Picture a couple sharing a sweet little kiss, while a constable dramatically clutches his chest like he just witnessed a felony. The colony basically told husbands that romance came with a strict government-enforced schedule. 33. Productivity itself became sinful for one full day. In colonial Massachusetts, running a commercial freight wagon or hauling goods as across town on the Sabbath was entirely outlawed. Your cargo stayed put by law. Picture a merchant with a fully loaded wagon, horses ready to go, frozen at the town line because the calendar said Sunday. The goods just sat there awkwardly while the whole colony pretended commerce did not exist. 34. Imagine doing your grocery shopping wearing a giant scarlet sign of shame. Citizens convicted of public drunkenness in colonial Massachusetts were legally forced to wear a huge red wooden letter D around their necks for months, a months-long wearable hangover. The massive D announced to the entire town exactly how someone's weekend went. The colony basically invented a public reputation tracker, and the real punishment was simply everyone knowing forever. 35. Colonial towns employed an actual professional fence referee. This was a real salaried government job called the fence viewer, whose entire purpose was inspecting private property lines and settling neighborly boundary disputes. Picture two red-faced farmers screaming over 3 inches of dirt while a calm official strolls up carrying the full authority of the law. The colony genuinely decided that petty backyard arguments deserved their own dedicated public servant. 36. Somewhere, a constable stood ready to conduct a full chicken census. Boston health rules heavily restricted keeping more than a specific small number of domestic chickens inside city residential areas. Too many birds meant a real problem. Picture a man nervously counting his hens every single morning, terrified that one surprise chick would tip him over the legal limit and straight into criminal poultry territory. 37. A bold haircut could become a genuine legal scandal. Colonial Massachusetts forbade women from cutting their hair short like a man's, because it was considered an offense against the natural order. Picture a woman simply trimming her locks while horrified neighbors gasp like she committed treason with a pair of scissors. The colony decided the length of your hair was a matter of public concern, and the law was personally watching your ponytail. 38. Unlicensed cider was practically organized crime. In colonial Massachusetts, brewing hard cider or beer at home to sell commercially without a magistrate-specific license was outlawed. No permit meant no profit. Picture a guy proudly stirring a barrel in his cellar, dreaming of riches, while a constable upstairs sniffs the air suspiciously. The colony decided that turning apples into income required official government approval, and your basement was now a crime scene. 39. The night belonged to silence, and you were not allowed to disturb it. In colonial Massachusetts, making a screeching noise or shouting after sundown was legally prosecuted under the category of night walking. One loud yell after dark made you a suspect. Picture a guy stubbing his toe at midnight, letting out a single howl, and instantly hearing a constable's footsteps marching toward his door to investigate the disturbance. 40. An unproductive childhood was treated like a serious legal failure. In colonial Massachusetts, parents who failed to teach their children a profitable hands-on trade could have those kids removed by town selectmen. Picture a stressed father, frantically teaching his son woodworking, while officials peer through the window taking notes. The colony basically turned parenting into a graded performance review, and falling behind meant the government stepped in. 41. Taking a Sunday boat ride for fun could drain your wallet. In colonial Massachusetts, traveling by boat or ferry across local waterways on a Sunday for leisure instead of church attendance was heavily fined. Picture a guy peacefully drifting along, enjoying the breeze, while a constable on the shore furiously scribbles his name down. The colony decided that relaxing on water was suspicious, and the only approved Sunday destination was a church pew. 42. Lying in colonial Massachusetts came with a metal upgrade to your face. If a citizen was convicted of persistent lying or spreading false news, the court ordered their upper lip bound with an actual legal metal clamp. Picture a known town gossip suddenly fitted with hardware, forced to mumble through every conversation. The colony basically decided that if your mouth could not be trusted, it would simply be locked shut by official decree. 43. Your neighbors legally took turns silently patrolling the streets all night long. Colonial Massachusetts towns forced citizens to act as night watches, walking around in complete silence, looking out for fires and trouble. Picture a sleepy farmer dragged from his warm bed, tiptoeing through dark, freezing streets, squinting suspiciously at every single chimney like an unpaid, exhausted firefighter. The colony decided fire safety was everyone's problem, and your turn came around you line whether you liked it or not. 44. A dead farm animal in the road came with a strict 24-hour countdown. In colonial Massachusetts, leaving an animal carcass in a public road or waterway for more than a day carried a heavy sanitation fine. Picture a stressed farmer frantically dragging a very large, very heavy cow off the path while a constable taps his foot, checking the time. The colony basically gave death itself a legal cleanup deadline. 45. Fancy silk hoods required proof you were officially rich. Colonial Massachusetts banned wearing fine silk hoods or gold scarves for anyone who could not prove they belonged to the top economic tier. Picture a working woman draping a lovely scarf only for a constable to demand documentation of her net worth. The colony decided that luxury fabrics was a privilege and your wardrobe had to legally match your bank balance. 46. Taverns had a strict 1-hour drinking limit by law. Colonial Massachusetts innkeepers were legally prohibited from letting travelers drink for more than 60 straight minutes inside their establishments. Picture a weary traveler nursing his ale while the innkeeper anxiously watches a clock, ready to cut him off the second time was up. The colony basically installed a government-enforced last call, and the punishment for a slow drinker was simply leaving. 47. Firing your musket after dark could land you in serious trouble. In colonial Massachusetts, discharging a loaded firearm within city limits at night, unless defending against an actual attacker, was criminalized. Picture a guy cleaning his musket, accidentally setting it off, then freezing as constables sprint toward his house. The colony decided that random nighttime gunfire was a problem, and you had better have a genuine intruder to explain yourself. 48. Running away from your master made you a literal thief in the eyes of the law. In colonial Massachusetts, a servant who fled their household was legally pursued as a thief of contracted labor. Picture a man sprinting down a country road while officials chase him, treating his own 2 legs as a stolen property. The colony decided that escaping a bad situation was not freedom, it was technically grand theft yourself. 49. Opening your shop on Thanksgiving was a straight-up labor crime. In colonial Massachusetts, conducting any commercial business on Thanksgiving Day was strictly banned under state labor laws. Picture an eager shopkeeper unlocking his door, only for a constable to appear and shut it firmly with the full weight of the law. The colony decided that the holiday was sacred and the only acceptable activity was sitting still and being grateful. 50. Forgery in colonial Massachusetts cost you a piece of your ear. A person convicted of a severe act of forgery was sentenced to have one or both ears physically cropped off in public. Picture a forger nervously signing a fake document, fully aware that one slip meant a permanent, visible downgrade to his head. The colony basically turned your ears into collateral, and a bad signature came with a brutal, lasting receipt. 51. Saying no to a government job got you financially punished. In colonial Massachusetts, citizens who refused an elected town office like constable were legally slapped with a massive fine for dodging civic duty. Picture a man insisting he is way too busy, only for the town to hand him a bill instead of a break. The colony decided that public service was not a choice, and declining simply meant paying for the privilege of freedom. 52. Bringing a wild animal to the market without a permit was strictly illegal. In colonial Massachusetts, hauling any non-domesticated creature into a public market space required special official paperwork. Picture a man strolling in with something distinctly untamed tucked under his arm, vendors scattering in every direction while a stern constable loudly demands to see his permit. The colony decided that market day chaos had firm limits, and your surprise wild guest was now a genuine, fully documented legal problem. 53. Mixing wool and linen in a single outfit was banned by biblical decree. Colonial Massachusetts men were legally barred from wearing clothing that combined the two fabrics, following very specific scripture interpretations. Picture a guy cheerfully getting dressed, completely unaware that his cozy blended shirt was technically a sin against the actual law. The colony decided your wardrobe somehow needed theological approval, and an innocent fabric blend could quietly turn you into an accidental, well-dressed criminal. 54. Picking cranberries at the wrong time of year was a genuine punishable offense. In colonial Massachusetts, harvesting wild cranberries out of season on public lands was outlawed to protect the precious winter food supply. Picture a patient colonist sneaking out far too early, basket in hand, only for a constable to catch him completely red-handed and red-stained. The colony decided that fruit itself had a legal schedule, and jumping the line meant facing the law. 45. Being lazy was a literal crime you could be punished for. In colonial Massachusetts, town officials could legally prosecute anyone they decided was an idle person wasting their time instead of doing honest work. Picture a guy peacefully relaxing on a sunny afternoon, only for a selectman to march over and demand to know why he's not being productive. The colony decided that doing absolutely nothing was suspicious, and your free time was officially the government's business. 56. Living together before marriage was a serious criminal charge in colonial Massachusetts. An unmarried man and woman caught sharing the same roof-based prosecution for lewd cohabitation. Picture a flustered couple frantically inventing reasons why they definitely just happened to be in the same house, as a constable slowly raises a deeply skeptical eyebrow. The colony decided that romance under one roof required a wedding first, and convenient shortcuts were a punishable offense. 57. Bowling was banned for making the local workers have far too much fun. Massachusetts law made it illegal to operate a commercial bowling alley because it was seen as a dangerous distraction from honest labor. Picture a guy who simply wants to knock down a few pins, arriving to find the lanes shut down by official order. The colony decided that recreation threatened productivity, and even a cheerful afternoon of bowling became a serious civic concern. 58. Blasphemy in colonial Massachusetts came with a glowing red-hot iron rod. A person convicted of the crime could legally have their tongue bored straight through with the searing tool. Picture someone letting one forbidden phrase slip out, then slowly realizing the punishment was aimed directly at the body part responsible. The colony basically decided that if your words crossed a sacred line, the law would brutally target the exact instrument that produced them. 59. Skipping the annual town meeting cost you real money in early Plymouth. Missing the gathering without a valid, verifiable medical excuse resulted in an automatic financial penalty. Picture a man faking a dramatic theatrical limp, desperately hoping it looks convincing enough to dodge the fine, while suspicious officials inspect him from head to toe. The colony decided that civic attendance was mandatory, and your absence had better come with a genuine, well-documented reason. 60. Galloping through downtown Boston was outlawed as pure reckless menace. Riding a horse at dangerous breakneck speed through the crowded narrow streets was entirely illegal. Picture a show-off thundering past terrified pedestrians, scattering squawking chickens and panicked shoppers everywhere while a constable furiously begins drafting the charges. The colony decided that the streets were absolutely not a racetrack, and treating Boston like your personal speedway came with serious, well-deserved legal consequences. 61. Showing your shoulders in public was treated as a genuine offense. In colonial Massachusetts, women were legally required to keep their arms and shoulders fully covered by a modest shawl whenever walking outside. Picture a woman enjoying a warm afternoon, sleeves slipping slightly, only for a constable to gasp like he witnessed a scandal. The colony decided that bare shoulders were a public emergency, and your shawl was basically mandatory legal equipment. 62. Hoarding potatoes during a shortage made you an arrestable villain. In colonial Massachusetts, stockpiling a massive hoard of grain or potatoes in your cellar to drive up prices was a real crime. Picture a sneaky merchant guarding his secret mountain of spuds, rubbing his hands together, only for officials to march straight into his basement. The colony decided that profiting off a hungry town was not clever business. It was straight up illegal. 63. Mocking the official law book could land you straight in the town jail. In colonial Massachusetts, publicly defacing or ridiculing a printed copy of the colony's laws carried a mandatory sentence in the jail. Picture a frustrated citizen dramatically crumpling the rulebook in the square, then realizing that exact rulebook just sentenced him. The colony decided that insulting the law itself was a crime the law was extremely happy to punish. 64. Letting a stranger crash too long made you a criminal host. In colonial Massachusetts, lodging a traveler in your private home for more than 2 nights without reporting it to the selectmen was illegal. Picture a man nervously eyeing his house guest on night 3, mentally calculating exactly how much legal trouble that extra evening just created. The colony decided that hospitality had a strict expiration date and unreported guests were a punishable problem. 65. Printing your own money in colonial Massachusetts could literally cost you your life. Manufacturing paper currency without explicit direct authorization from the colonial court was treated as a capital crime. Picture an ambitious guy hunched over a homemade printing press, cranking out bills, completely ignoring that this hobby carried the ultimate penalty. The colony decided that counterfeiting was not petty mischief. It was a one-way ticket to the most serious courtroom imaginable. 66. Public humiliation came with a generous side of flying rotten vegetables. In colonial Massachusetts, petty criminals were forced to stand on a raised wooden platform in the town's center for hours while locals enthusiastically hurled spoiled produce at them. Picture a guy mounted up there, ducking a moldy cabbage and a soft tomato, as the entire town treats his punishment like a beloved weekend sport. The colony decided that justice should be loud, messy, and extremely well attended. 67. Owning the wrong ladder could put you on the wrong side of the law. Colonial Massachusetts laws mandated that every household keep a functional ladder long enough to reach the roof in case of a sudden fire. Picture an inspector showing up unannounced, measuring your ladder, shaking his head slowly with grave disappointment. The colony decided that fire preparedness was not a suggestion, and a too short ladder was a genuine civic failure. 68. Driving a winter sled without jingle bells was flat out illegal in colonial Massachusetts. Operating a horse-drawn sled through the snow without attaching a set of ringing bells to the horse actually broke the law. Picture a man gliding silently along the frosty road, only to slowly realize his quiet, peaceful little ride is technically a crime against the entire town. The colony decided that sleds needed a built-in warning sound, making festive jingling a strict legal requirement. 69. Fancy metal buttons on work clothes were policed by the government. In colonial Massachusetts, wearing buttons made of precious metals on everyday working garments was legally restricted to protect class distinctions. Picture a laborer proudly fastening up his shiny new buttons only for a constable to inspect his shirt like a suspicious appraiser. The colony decided that even your buttons had to know their place, and dressing above your rank was a real violation. 70. Catching too many fish at once was a genuine crime against the river. In colonial Massachusetts, using a massive commercial net that blocked an entire river system was strictly illegal. Picture a greedy fisherman stretching his enormous net bank to bank, grinning as a constable arrives to shut his giant operation down. The colony decided that one man could not legally trap an entire river's worth of fish for himself. 71. Celebrating an election win with gunfire was officially classified as terror. In colonial Massachusetts, firing a weapon in the city streets to cheer a political victory was legally treated as an act of public terror. Picture an overjoyed supporter blasting his musket skywards in celebration, instantly transforming his happy moment into a serious criminal charge. The colony decided that election joy and loud gunfire simply could not legally share the same evening. So out of all 71, which one actually broke your brain the most? The foxtail wake-up call, the illegal Christmas, or paying a fine just for whistling? Drop your number in the comments because I genuinely want to know which colonial rule you think was the dumbest. And if Massachusetts somehow made being lazy a crime, then sitting here not subscribed to dumbest things is basically a felony. So hit subscribe, smash that like button, and stick around because the next state we expose is somehow even more ridiculous than this one.